All right, so we are recording. I am Marcelino Nogueiro, the current president of the Golden Gate Computer Society. And we have a special guest, David Haskell, and he's going to be, I'm going to let him do more of an introduction. We had him a month, or no, 2 months ago. We started out, but had a little bit of connection issues. So we wanted to really hear what he had to say. So we rescheduled it for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to David.
Well, thank you, Marcelino. And also greetings to my dear good friend, Stephen Traeger there, all laid back and relaxed.
Yeah, he's really relaxed, isn't he?
And, I know we tried this 2 months ago. And of course, at that time I was in New Zealand, and somehow the protocols between the two countries did not allow it to happen. But we did have a good conversation, even though that wasn't fully presented in terms of the slideshow. But tonight, where I come from, my first solar business was in 1981. So I've been in this business now for over 45 years. And it's certainly evolved. And Symmetric Energy, which is my new company, I formed 3 years ago when I saw that the market was driving towards batteries and the solar industry itself was not really catching up to it. So in forming my company, Symmetric Energy, with my dear friend and colleague, Marius Winger. He's a Norwegian and I was the Kiwi. I did immigrate to New Zealand in 1974 and have 3 children and 7 grandchildren in New Zealand. So I kind of feel like that was home for me. But I'm now returned. And without further ado, I think Marcelino, unless there's any questions from anybody, I'm certainly happy to entertain any kind of comment during this presentation. And I think we had, there's a small enough group here that we can really get involved in the conversation. So, and I enjoyed it last time. It was free flowing and we did have a good time. So let me just start my slides and I'll try to run through them as quickly as I can. And so there we are. I assume that everybody can see that. That's a picture to the left of Maui taming the sun. It's a New Zealand myth where the sun was going around and around and around and all the villages were getting very upset. So Maui went out and got a whalebone and carved it up and put a rope on it and grabbed the sun and slowed it down. So it's always been my symbol as we got to work with the sun. The sun is our ultimate resource. And so here we go. Now, if batteries is the answer, just what are the questions? And of course, we come in a time when there's great convergence. There's a convergence of connectivity. There's a convergence of big data, this whole artificial intelligence and automation. And of course, we have solar that has just plummeted in price. And the same thing is happening with storage. And of course, in this process of climate change that we find ourselves in, for security, the need for resilience has become just probably more important than the electricity itself coming in. And so at the same time, we have a federal government now that is helping markets drive towards the change. And so all of these things are converging upon a moment. And if we look at what we start with, and really, I've kind of focused this towards the computer society, because many of you are involved in smart homes, homes that learn how to interact in a computerized concept. And of course, smart homes make smart neighborhoods. Smart neighborhoods make smart cities. And what we've had in the past is an abundant use of fossil fuels. And it's, you turn on the natural gas and you heat your house almost in a matter of seconds. Matter of a few minutes, you can get warm. But that kind of fossil fuel kind of process predicated on waste. I mean, when you burn fossil fuels, you're losing 70% of the energy just in the combustion. So that we have to learn to become far smarter, far more efficient. And of course, this smart grid is being fed not just from fossil fuels, but from a whole series of different, whether it's solar, wind, nuclear, or even there is residual thermal. And so if what we look at in terms of California, in terms of the world, I mean, we've all been looking that the solar solution is going to be the thing that's going to save us. All we need is a lot of solar panels. Well, what we've got in California, as they discovered in Hawaii, that you can only put so much solar on in the middle of the day. Because at one point, it simply becomes too much. And this is called the California duckback curve. And historically, this is the upper line that you can see my cursor going through, is how much power is being delivered to the grid from the utilities combined. And of course, historically, in the 1990s, when we all ran across the California energy crisis, what we had was somebody would turn on an air conditioner in Fresno at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at July the 10th on the hottest day of the year, and that would brown out the whole state would be browned out. But now what we've got is we brought on more solar. Each one of these is 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, 16, and all the way down to 220. If we go down to 221, the belly of the duck is down in around 12,000 megawatts. And there was actually a moment in time last year in the spring where solar provided 98% of all electrical use in California. But something happens every day. And every day the sun goes down. And so the time between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, suddenly we have to bring in more generation. And in this case, it's peaking plants. It historically has been peaking plants. There's 13,000 megawatts that have to be brought onto the line. And actually, the deeper the belly goes, the more peaking plants you have to bring on. And so at this point, our challenge is that how do we get rid of fossil fuels and still rely on solar? And that's where the point is that the answer is batteries everywhere. Because what we're looking for is 24 hours worth of sun. And in our factories, in our buildings, in our housing complexes, everywhere that we go, we need to make sure that we can store the energy of the sun, store the energy of wind. There are other kind of batteries that are not chemical, that are not like traditional batteries. The largest single battery in California happens to be in the Tehachapi Mountains, and it's pumped storage. Every day, solar pumps up water to a holding tank, and then between 4 and 9 o'clock, that water is released. And that is another form of storage. So there's lots of different kinds of storage on a bigger context. But I think what this group wants to talk about is really how does it relate to us in our everyday life. And so this whole notion that we need storage for that. Now there's different kinds of storage. This is your larger grid storage. And, you know, we kind of think of batteries and we think of our car battery, but this is what batteries look like. This is at a bank of batteries at a data center. And so you see that they're all 5, 10 kilowatt hour batteries all stacked up. And in this context, here's another one. This is a 750 megawatt battery component down in Point Lobos, just south of Santa Cruz. They retired a gas-fired peaker plant down there. And instead of building another power plant, they decided to go into mass storage. So this is charged up with solar, with wind during the day. And of course, when it's required, it's dispatched instantaneously. And I think that's one of the key things is the battery allows the dispatchable energy 24/7, 365. So it's this notion of 24 hours of sun being able to service the full grid and all of the batteries that's involved. Now that goes from grid scale. This one comes down to your residential scale. This is a Solar Edge, the largest inverter manufacturer in America. This little battery is a 9.5 kilowatt hour battery made by LG Chem. It runs around $7,000 to $8,000. If you want to install this whole system with 5, 6, 7 kilowatts of energy, you're looking around $25,000. But you do get a 25%, 26% tax credit. You get around $2,000 from the state of California in terms of this horrible program they have called SCHIP, the Self-Generation Investment Program. But the idea is that anybody who puts solar in now, they need storage to go with it. That's really the bottom line. And so as we look down and really you start looking at how do I choose the right solar for myself? What's the right solar? What's the right storage system? How do they match together? I think one of the key issues here is that you must always look at solar and batteries as being an investment. 3 years ago, when I started the solar battery business, it was hard to make a battery pay for itself. It would pay for itself in about year 10, and year 10 is the year that it runs out of warranty. And sometimes I think that some of the lithium ion kind of batteries, the Tesla batteries, I don't even think they're going to be able to live through their warranties. They're going to run out. So that it wasn't a real investment. It was more of an investment in security of supply. But the price of batteries now have come down to the place where I can get you a good 7 or 8 year return. And so don't look at batteries as being just simply a cost to give you resiliency, because the point is that batteries not only work when the power goes down, but the batteries, in order to be assist the grid stabilization, they work every day. So you fill your up in this case, you fill this battery up first thing in the morning, and then you proceed to export your solar onto the grid with the net energy metering. And then at 4 o'clock, when your power prices are at 40 to 45 and they're getting close to 50, and there's some rates that are above 50 cents a kilowatt hour now, you run on your battery. So that battery is saving you that expensive energy during the day. So you're converting your low cost solar, high cost value, and it's in the world of Wall Street, it's called arbitrage. In the world of solar batteries, it's called arbitrage. Buy low, sell high. So that's what that's about. Now, also electric vehicles. I run my little electric vehicle on sunshine. What do you run your vehicle on? Fossil fuel? We always used to joke about being able to run on sunshine. Well, that's exactly what I run my car on now. So we've all seen this, and I don't think we need to go over this too much. This is your basic solar panels, inverter, goes through the main service panel, and it gets exported out, and you get credit for it. You basically run your meter backwards. With a battery system, you've got the same solar panels coming down to a charge controller. That charge controller will charge the battery bank, go back through. This is all DC side. This is the DC side of your meter. This is the AC side of your meter. And so you back feed. You have, on a normal day, you're just back feeding 4 o'clock, you use your power. But when the power goes off, this whole system right here from the meter gets cut off, and this system then becomes a standalone energy system, so that with solar and batteries, you virtually can run in perpetuity as long as the sun shines. So there's lots of little things you've got to watch out, not so little. The size of your main service panel is really critical. And all of you folks who have a house that was built in the 1970s or 80s, you've got this 100 amp panel, and it's causing problems because it's not big enough. You need to upgrade that up to a 200 amp. I'm building with new houses. I've got 2 houses I'm working on now that both have 800 amp main service panels, and they're big houses. But yet, when you look at electrify everything, then you're looking at more electrical services. And so, if you're going to charge your car, you're going to heat your home, you're going to get rid of fossil fuels, then it really comes down to this new combination of electrifying everything and making sure you've got the electrical infrastructure in your home to make it all happen. Now, the big question is that if we try to back up all of our house, it's very expensive. So basically, when the power goes out now, we get to choose what we want to back up. And of course, essential items like anything medical has come first. Absolutely. Life and death. The second thing that's really critical, and this is, it's all about water. If you have a sump pump or you have a water well and the power goes out and you don't have any water, Well, that's a life and death situation. So that's critical to back up. And of course, these pumps are induction motors, and they require a lot more power than just a light bulb. So they have a different power structure. So that's something we have to take into effect. But of course, everybody wants to be able to charge all their everything. You know, they want to charge their cell phones, they want to charge their computers, they want to continue to live their life. And I know that when we had that power outage here in Northern California 2 years ago, when we lost power for 5 to 6 days, we lost more than our cell phones. We lost connection to the community. The community itself fell down. And it was dangerous because there was fires. In the fires, we couldn't even communicate with one another. So that historically, I always see myself in the business of selling clean energy. But over the last 2 years, I realized that my business now is selling security and safety. And it's a very different business model. Now, I think won't go too deeply into this, but with batteries, you have a capacity, how many kilowatt hours are in it. It's like a gas tank, how much gas is in a gas tank, and you pull it down. But there's also a flow rate, what flows from the gas tank, what flows from the battery, and that's the flow rate is that ampacity. It's the maximum you can draw off. And so as you get in bigger capacity and higher amperage, the costs go up significantly. And the key thing is to, at this point in time, given that we want security of supply, we want to make sure we prioritize our loads. And so we have a critical load panel that we now establish. So we take all of the loads that we want, our TV, our refrigerator, our freezer, any health things, our water pumps, and we put them on a critical load, auxiliary load panel. So when the power goes out, the only thing that is being serviced is this side of the grid, this side of the meter. And only those particular products are being supported with a range of batteries. Now, in saying that, you have inverters that have multiple capacity to pick up, if you got a portable generator, the generator can charge the batteries. And so of having a generator that runs 24/7 and makes a huge noise and drives everybody crazy, you can run for an hour and charge the batteries and turn it off. So there's ways to go about things. This is a product that we use. It's called a Lumen, and it has that ability to prioritize loads in your main service panel. And then you're able to select which loads you want on. Excuse me. And it's just another way to make your battery go longer and you have more control over it. It's more about the smart. And this is a San Francisco product. Every single breaker in this main service panel is attached to a computer. So you literally can program your house to run in different situations with power up, power down, and so forth. And the thing that many of us forget is that we're looking for batteries and how do we buy batteries? But all of us who have made the transition to electric vehicles, we've got a huge capacity of battery in that vehicle. My little Spark has a 25 kilowatt hour battery in it. If I was to buy that from Tesla, I'd have to pay $16,000. Other companies have more, but if I bought that car for $10,000, so the battery was actually the cheaper thing in terms of in that car. Now, I've got a new product here. I haven't talked this long since the COVID thing started. So this is a bidirectional inverter, and it allows you to plug your house into your car. This unit is a solar device, so it's charged from the sun. It'll charge your car, but the key thing is that your house can then run off your car when the power goes down. So that's a new product that will be available in about a month. And we're one of 3 companies in California that will be providing this. So that now you've got these homes, and I don't need to go into this too much. You can just see the configuration with your with your EV, your solar, your monitoring platforms, your smart energy use. This is a product that many of you might have seen advertised on TV, the Generac. It's an excellent product. We've got a lot of success. Symmetric Energy is the largest seller of Generac in the North Bay. And this is a really solid product. And it's backed by the world's largest generator company. And they realize that their business in the future is not going to just be generators. And then you get to larger off-grid systems with bigger inverters. And so you get it into there. So this is just a very quick summary of where the home battery market is and how we sell it. And at this point, Marcelino, I think it's open question time. And I know last time we had a great deal of conversation, so I'll let you call on people, or anybody can speak up as they wish.
Yeah, so anybody has any questions, let's go ahead and start asking. And David, thank you very much. That was a very interesting. If you can go ahead and stop sharing, then we can get into kind of a grid mode, and you can see everybody. So so right now I think everyone is muted, and if you do want to ask a question, just unmute yourself, and let's go ahead and try asking, unmute and ask, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to start out by asking one thing is, can you tell us more about the different types of batteries? We kind of started talking about this last time. The lithium ion kind of batteries that we're sort of used to, there are some issues with those. And, you started telling us about some new technology. So maybe we can kick something off with that and let everybody in on that part.
That's very good. Of course, the lithium-based battery still has the dominant role in the market. But historically, what we've had is lithium-ion batteries, lithium, cobalt, magnesium batteries, and they have a problem with thermal runaway. There's been a real concern about what happens when they catch fire, and there's been a few YouTubes showing batteries catching fire and taking 6 days to put out. And as someone in the business and talking to people, I've been told, look, you don't put a lithium battery inside, or at least that kind of battery. And where we've evolved to, and the evolution is happening right now, the lithium ferrous phosphate, the LFP battery, it's thermally stable. It will cycle perhaps 2 to 3 times longer. If you manage it carefully, it really will give you that 15 to 20 years, where in cycles, maybe 6,000 to 10,000 cycles. So that's a lithium ferrous phosphate, LFP. And those are coming on the market. Enphase, which is a product made up in Petaluma, or at least designed in Petaluma, they have that. And I'm really getting to the point where I will only sell lithium ferrous phosphate batteries. So Discovery batteries, there's a whole range of simplified batteries, a lot of new batteries that are coming out, but they're moving towards that direction. And of course, I think last time we were talking, Marcelino, when I was preparing for this, I Googled up and looked at Wikipedia and asked how many different kinds of batteries are there? Well, there was hundreds, but there's flow batteries, there's this battery, there's that battery, and the technology for battery change is happening rapidly. And I think the one battery that I've been looking at very carefully is the supercapacitor battery. Now, capacitors, we've had capacitors in our lives for forever. They're, in our cars, they store energy and they release it very quickly, and they've never been an effective way for electrical storage because you couldn't control them. But they were great for slowing and regulating passage of energy in machines. But now there's firms that have now they're able to manage that supercapacitor battery. Those batteries are being purported to last 1 million cycles. They don't really know how long they're going to last. They're inert. They don't burn. They're not liquid. They're not chemical based. but they have this ability to hold charge. And so that in a very short time, I think that market is going to change. Even Tesla has bought a company called Maxwell that has a specialty in supercap batteries. So that don't hold your breath and wait for the technology to change before you get your battery. But at the same time, we're going to be just as we are with that kind of Moore's law, that you continually to get twice as efficient at half the price. And I think the place that solar became more efficient at half the price is that the power density of each solar cell became double, triple, quadruple the size of the cell before. And they still were able, same size panel, but four to five times the power. So the cost of it was reduced at that same factor. But I could talk about different batteries, and I'm sure Ron's got something to say there about batteries.
I do.
Yeah,
I
go
have
ahead,
a
Ron.
question. I have looked at companies that are working on the supercapacity battery. Do you have any? I was not able to find one I could invest in. And do you have any companies that you're looking at that it's possible to invest in the supercapacity battery?
Well, I don't know about investment. I know that there's one company in particular that we purchased their product. We brought it here into California. And it's caused us problems because it's not UL listed yet. And so we had it designed for an off-grid situation. We were hoping we were going to get it past the building inspectors, but we couldn't. So we're now kind of testing them. But the name of that company, Ron, is Kilowatt Labs.
But they're a wholly owned.
They're a wholly owned. They're private. They're a public-private company. I don't know how. I really don't know who's trading on the market. I know that there are other companies, other energy companies that are trying to buy that company that are publicly traded. But I don't know. There's the 15 of us here. I don't think I'd be letting any secrets off. I work with a company called CleanSpark that went through their IPO a few years back, and they're trying to buy a supercap battery. CleanSpark. They've got.
If you could find them, you could hook them in series and use them for solar backup.
Well, you could use them for virtually anything you wanted that you need a battery. And the beauty of supercaps is that they charge 5 times as fast, or more than 5 times as fast. You could fill up a battery as fast as you could fill up a car at a gas station.
Yeah, so but do you think that the supercap batteries are probably going to be seen first in the automobile industry, because that's where you really need the fast charging, so you can go farther without having to sit there and wait for an hour for your battery to charge, right?
Yeah, no, they're being used even now because of this kind of explosive power they have. So there's talk of putting in hybrid ones. So you've got it's a changing. Now I'm no super expert on chemical compounds and batteries itself. I certainly know how to put them into place and make them work for myself. But the rate at which battery technology is changing, it's anybody's guess. But the supercap, the lithium ferrous phosphate, big flow batteries, where you just have fluids that flow from across one electrode to the other, back and forth, and the only thing that wears out is the pump that pumps the fluids. And those kinds of technologies are quite exciting for larger scale community grids, because what we're going to be looking at is that we've got our house, we've got our community, we've got our neighborhood, and the whole paradigm about how we generate electricity is going to be turned on its head. We're going to be generating electricity at the grassroots level and sending it out. And it's these nodes of batteries that are connected and communicate. As I was saying in the beginning, they're going to make the difference. But what is the battery? Right now, 95% of all the market is lithium based. And so that's where the money is. I think these supercaps are going to be very exciting in how they challenge that. So, but I can't give you any more beyond that. I'm sorry. I wish I knew.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think Russ has his hand up next. Go ahead, Russ.
PG&E was announcing that they're looking at changing the rate that they're willing to pay for power when it's going back onto the grid, and that's probably going to come about and change things quite a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just on last Thursday afternoon, the Senate subcommittee passed through a bill that starts to eliminate net energy metering. And net energy metering has been the historical driver of solar growth. It's basically you're able to run your meter backwards and you get paid the otherwise applicable tariff. So whatever tariff it is that when you generate your power, you get paid for it. And so that's why solar systems have been 4, 5, 6, 7 year payback periods. And they've been so amazing. We've got 1 million solar systems, all based on net energy metering. And now that concept of net energy metering is because we've got too much sun in the middle of the day, it's overloading the grid because that duckback curve is there. And that you can't argue quite substantially that we can't take any more solar until we get more storage. And this situation has already happened in Hawaii. Hawaii is a small island. The power prices there were diesel generation. So they were 60, 70 cents per kilowatt hour. And when you're getting 7 cents off your solar panels, everybody went to solar, but the grid could not handle it. Everybody is pushing their solar back into the grid and the grid started burning up. So they passed a law where you cannot export your solar. So every house then becomes much more involved with self-consumption. So I try to design a house now with batteries and solar to meet their energy needs. And of course, if they've got an automobile, that makes it easier. It also depends what time the automobile is around the house. You know, we have a system now where we charge automobiles at night because power is cheap. Well, that's got to change. We need to charge all the automobiles in the middle of the day when the sun's up. But they're in the solar industry. There are people who think this is going to be the death knell of the solar industry. I don't have that opinion. I believe that it'll be a far more self-consumption and we'll have a lot more microgrids. And if they're going to make it impossible for us to sell power back to the grid, then they damn well make sure we can sell power to our neighbor. That's the key thing. You've got to be able to sell your excess power into the grid, not necessarily to PG&E, but to your neighbor or to anybody else who wants to be an off-taker. Because again, energy is simultaneous. You put power into the grid and you can take power off 100 miles away. And as long as you pair it up, I'll put this in and you buy that, then that works. And of course, I've been in New Zealand for the last 6 months, and the New Zealand market is wide open for that. Anybody, we could all today form a power company in New Zealand. And if Ron happened to have a big factory down the road, we could sell power directly to Ron and we could probably do the transactions in a matter of a week. So that's the new power market, new demand. It's not all about PG&E. I mean, PG&E as a company, their shareholding goals are to maximize their profit, but what we need is a grid that's going to maximize public benefit.
Does a solar system put out power even when it's overcast?
Look, when it's raining, it's very, it's piss poor. It really doesn't work. But at the same time, just as you can go out to the beach on a foggy day, you can get sunburned. So it's the radiant heat of the sun that makes the photon excites the photon. But when it's dark and dreary, anybody who has a solar system has seen their monitoring as it just dips way down. So the difference between winter and summer is about a factor of 3 here in the Northern California.
So if PG&E gets this through, that's where the system has really paid for itself today, is that you could sell during the summer when you're producing all kinds of power, you're getting that and you're banking that amount. And then in the winter, when you're not producing it, you could go and take it back. And then there's I think they have it at the certain time when they balance that account out. But that's what PG&E is looking at changing, I guess.
That's correct. They call it a true up. And Yeah, no, energy markets today are becoming much flatter. They're becoming, real related to the time of use. And so that notion that you can bank solar in the middle of summertime and get it and then offset your winter use, when you look at the totality of the energy system, there's no logic there. So it's a big issue, and it's one that I encourage everybody to learn about and to make their voice known to their legislator, because just telling solar they can't sell back to the grid, what I'm saying, you've got to be able to sell someplace else.
Now,
Yeah, Kevin's got his hand up.
oh yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
David, on that related question of Russ's, is there any role for the green providers in that? Because I've seen the same thing on the PG&E attempts on the legislation side. Is there any role for the green players to play in that? The green provider, obviously Marin's got a big high profile green provider here.
Yeah, what Kevin's referring to is the CCAs, the Community Choice Aggregators. It's the Sonoma Clean Powers, it's the San Francisco Clean Powers. What you've got with MCE here in Marin County. And what they are doing right now is they're starting to develop a new source of power. It's called a VPP. It's called a virtual power plant. And that power plant is actually made up of batteries. You can bring power onto the grid when you need it, if you need more supply, or conversely, you can draw power off the grid so that you have enough supply to meet the demand. And so what are the community choice aggregators are doing? They're trying to invest in these virtual power plants. And of course, if you and I would have a battery and we are actually exporting back to the grid or taking it off the grid, then those virtual power plants are going to be paid money to do that. You can monetize it. So they are going to, it's another level of revenue stacking for the battery companies. So that Southern California Edison it's got a big VPP program. There's other different, so you don't have to be a CCA to do it, but there's a whole new way of looking at energy and how we balance it. And this is where what's become critical is we need to make sure we do it for the public good and not for the benefit of some shareholders who live someplace else.
Well, Kevin still has a follow-up.
Marcelino. This is a bit forward-looking, David, but I came upon an article on the concept of massless energy.
You explain a bit more?
Massless energy. Let me pull up my website here. It's this technology college had a breakthrough where, for the first time, they are actually able to store energy in the structure of a device that you're providing energy to, so that you don't need the classic. I can pull up the website, but I'll share it with Marcelino and John, and he can share it with you. But and it's obviously very, very emerging. But they've already it's beyond POC, where they can now actually use the structure of the automobile, for example, and actually be the energy store. So all of a sudden, a third of your weight and a third of your costs go away because your structure is also your store of energy.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, I mean, I've been, as I gave you my background a little bit, I've been in this for 45 years. And there's something new that's happening. It's fundamentally changed. I remember, I don't know if anybody here knows the Rocky Mountain Institute out of Colorado, and there's this gentleman, Amory Levins, who's been our guru in energy efficiency and renewables for decades. And I always remember a conversation that I had with him in 1979. And he said, beware what you wish for. You end up having energy that's too cheap to meter, and you'll end up then using that, and you'll exhaust all the other resources because you'll make something. You'll just, all this free energy, and you'll just use it, and you'll exhaust all of your other resources. So be careful what you wish for. And I've always carried that with me, but just recently, I've had a different sort of epiphany. And that's it, that there are certain natural energy sources, whether they be tidal, whether they be different kinds of wind. Wind is the cheapest renewable energy out there right now. Offshore wind is generating power at 1 to 2 cents a kilowatt hour. And off Europe, and Biden has just put a great big new offshore wind program in. But what's fascinating is that some of these, it's not about it's not as if we are lacking energy, but we've got to make sure we do the right thing with it. And one of the things that's coming up is that carbon sequestration and capture, which has always been a bit of a have. It's never really been believing it. It's always been too expensive because energy was too expensive. But now they're getting a set of renewables that can start capturing carbon out of the atmosphere, which is exciting. And it's I think there's so much quality, clean energy around us that we'll have more than enough to satisfy our needs. And I don't think it's all going to be about driven by price. But Kevin, innovation is what's brought us to this point, and I think, I've got a lot of hope that the innovation will continue to drive the kind of change that we need, and hopefully it'll be clean.
We got a question, I think, from Russ. Go ahead, Russ.
You got a big finger there, Russ.
The distribution is all handled by PG&E, correct? I mean, the wiring to get into all the homes and all the businesses and stuff.
Well, you've got it within the PG&E territory, but you've also got, Sacramento Municipal Utility. You've got municipal utility down in Palo Alto that own the wires. And I don't know, when PG&E stock was down almost negative a few years back with the fires, I just felt like the government should have bought them and should have bought the stock, and we would have then owned the wires ourselves. When you look at most Western countries, the grid is like a highway, and it's a public entity, and it's run for the public benefit. That's the way it is in New Zealand. If you want to put power onto the grid, you pay a tolling charge, but it's not constricted. It's not, and it's maintained by a neutral entity. So that this notion of having a grid that's all driven by PG&E or Southern California Edison, I think, call me a socialist, but I tend to think that part of our economy needs to be held for the common good, because it's going to be important that grid works for us all. That's my belief on it.
Well, doesn't the grid need to be redone, that actually we're producing power here at a certain times, and when the East Coast is not producing power, we're still producing power. It's got to be going around in a circle. And
yep. There's a Western. There's a concept that we're going to make a Western grid so that wind in the Midwest will come to California and solar in California will go out that way. It's being talked about a lot in that regard. Absolutely.
Because power, it's use it or lose it type of situation. Am I correct? You can't. It's got to keep flowing, otherwise they're going to dump it off.
This is where we talk about batteries and storage.
Well, I that's what you're talking about, batteries, but it's got to go someplace, otherwise they've got to get rid of it.
You need to, it's simultaneous. That's the concept. Electricity is simultaneous, so you need to harmonize the whole process. And what more precisely kind of coming home, Russ, is that the PG&E gets paid on a cost plus basis. They spend $100 million, they'll get $110 million back. So they make $10 million on every $100 million they spend. And they've been plowing a lot of money into the larger transmission side, which is counter to our public good, because they're making a lot of money. So we've got an energy market that's not incentivized to give us the right results right now. That's one of the battles that, the utilities have somehow captured a lot of the public regulatory side. So there's a lot to be talked about. We're really changing the way in which energy is consumed and used.
So one question, if you're putting in a solar system, and you obviously would make sense to put the batteries in, would you size the batteries so that they're twice as large as what your consumption is, twice the capacity of what your consumption is, so that you could sell that back? Or is that at this point, because of the new regulations, not worth the effort?
Well, regulations right now, when we put in a system more than 110% of your existing use, we have to justify what we're doing. So I've got to tell PG&E, oh, he's going to buy a new heat pump, he's going to get a car, he's going to change out his water heater, and I need to quantify that. So they've kind of capped how much power you can put in your house, because they want to maintain that kind of parity.
Right.
But Marcelino, I think you're getting down to a point, is if a community wants to make more power than they use so that they can share that with another community and make money on it, why not? Why not?
Right.
And of course, we have Cal ISO, which is the California Independent Systems Operator, who runs the whole state grid, and they continually balance power coming and going. And so part of the process is making, and they're supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to make sure that just people have power when they need it, so that there's, it becomes a dynamic market. If you have excess power, then you sell it to somebody else who needs it. So it's a buyer seller, but it also creates far more resiliency right now. And that's where we're coming from, is that this large transmission distribution lines that have caused all these horrible fires, that's not sustainable. We can't do that. And it's and so we have to, this is part of the new way of making sure that our communities stay safe, our houses stay warm, and we get the appliances we need.
I see John's hand.
Yeah, John, go ahead. You're muted, John. So
Yeah, so
there you go.
yeah, I was hoping to bring this discussion sort of back down to earth. So I have a solar system that was put in before, batteries were, really economical and so forth. So when I've looked at trying to add batteries, most of the companies I talk to aren't interested. They want to put in a whole solar system with the batteries. And if it's just a battery system, I can't get them to return my call. Is that the case, or is there something I do?
Well, no, you've been talking to Tesla.
No, I've been talking to, searching the internet and talking.
Okay, well, here, there's what our solar systems, when we put batteries with them, they're called DC coupled. It's all DC. So the inverter runs the solar, and it also connects to the battery. So it's a DC coupled system. In your case, John, you've got an existing solar system. So you want an AC coupled system where you have an inverter that is used to charge and discharge the batteries, in that the power from the solar goes through that inverter. And so the Tesla Powerwall has been designed for arbitrage. It really was never designed as backup. It doesn't work well if your power goes down. It's not an off-grid system. But I've just been working with I've discovered just recently, because this AC system is perplexing, because it's not as much money for solar. We make more money putting in solar batteries. It's, we get a percentage of our markup. But the AC system is a lot of work and not a lot of profit. So a lot of companies aren't involved in it. But yet nonetheless, Panasonic has an AC coupled system. There's a product called Iguana that is an AC coupled system. Electric out of San Leandro is an AC coupled system. And I've just recently come across a Schneider inverter, which is the Schneider XW6848, that only costs around $3,000, and it can be teamed up with the smaller 2 or 3 batteries. And so you're getting maybe 9 kilowatts hours, and the average home uses the average home. Now it's hard to find the average home, but statistically the average home uses around 30 kilowatt hours a day. So if you're looking at just backing up your critical loads, you're looking at 8 or 9 kilowatt hours. And so the combination of this new Schneider inverter and a little collection of batteries, I think I could put that out into the market for around $10,000. But it does become difficult when the electrician wants to come in and what do you want to back up? And if they has to pull it out and you got too many sub panels in your house, it gets to be difficult. So that's why a lot of solar companies just kind of say, no, it's not worth the effort.
Yeah, that was sort of my second question was, when you're trying to identify and pull the critical loads when you have sub panels, how do you actually wire that?
Well, that's where you quite literally, I've had a house just recently where there was 3 or 4 sub panels and the critical loads were spread all over the house. And so we literally had to pull the wires back to a critical load panel. And it took a lot of time and effort. When you've got but the other side is that we've now got equipment that will back up a 200 amp panel. And I showed it on my little slide thing. I didn't spend much time, but that little lumen, which then can prioritize loads. So you can literally back up your whole main service panel and say like your air conditioner that runs too much, or your oven or your dryer, any kind of system like that really isn't going to be supported by batteries. You take them off and then your batteries support the rest of your main service panel. And that's probably the easiest, quickest way to do it now.
So I also have a generator that I got quite a while ago, EU3000, but it's 110 instead of 220 split phase. And so what I'd like to do is when the power goes out, just disconnect from the grid, plug in the generator, but have the solar power do most of the heavy lifting except at night. But is there a way to do that?
No, you really need to have that interface. That battery has to be there to give you the right sine wave, and it keeps the charge at the right place. And it is 240. It is a split phase 120 240 service, which is compatible with your house. You could perhaps get dedicated loads to that 120 or even DC loads, but you'd have to be really clever about that, John.
Well, right now I just run extension cords, but that means I'm basically completely wasting my solar when the power's out, which just drives me nuts.
Yeah, no, that was that's it drives a lot of people nuts.
One could follow up on that before, Russ. So, and I, like John, I've asked about retrofitting batteries, because mine system was also put in before batteries were really something that I wanted to do. And the minute you talk about that, they want to tear out everything, including the solar panels, and start from scratch. And I'm going, well, the solar panels are fine. There should be a way of retrofitting the inverter so that you can hook up to the batteries. And is there an inverter that you can pull out your existing one and put in one with batteries? Or
well, there's 1 million solar systems in California, and the inverter is probably the thing that's going to run out first, that's going to be required to be replaced. It has a 10-year warranty, unlike the panels that have a 25 to 30-year warranty. And so what we're seeing is if someone's got an inverter, what kind of inverter you got, Marcelino?
I don't know the brand of it. It was put in by Solar City. But
but you can end up replacing that inverter with a DC. Well, they're all DC inverters, but they with the battery capability. So the Solar Edge product. I mean, but then you got to put new optimizers on your panels. The easiest way to go is an AC coupled system, and that AC coupled system is the one I've been talking about, where you throw on the inverter and you got batteries that go with it. The Iguana. The Schneider one that I'm thinking of, and really, I know there's a huge niche in the market for this, and I think I've got the right product for it. But again, it is site specific. We can't just, it's not like a refrigerator that you can plug in and bring home and say thank you.
No, I didn't think it would be plug and play, but definitely, to put in all new solar panels is crazy to me, because that's a waste of.
No, you don't need, other than the fact that sometimes, depending on how good your solar is, again, remembering that we've tripled the power of that same solar system that's on your roof. So if it went in at 4 or 5 kilowatt hours, it could now be a 12 with the same size. So you can upgrade it, treat it as an investment. This whole notion of AC coupled it's something we just got to work on, and it's something we have to solve. And they've got to put the right incentives to help it happen.
Right.
Well, I have microinverters, so it's not one central inverter. It's a microinverter on each panel.
Yeah, Enphase, which is your microinverter manufacturer, and there's Chilicon, there's a few other out there in the market, but Enphase has a very good new, expensive though. It is expensive. Their in charge battery system is quite sophisticated.
Hey, Russ, you had a question?
Well, I looked at a solar system, and I pretty much figured out after I got the price on it that at my age, I couldn't see the return on investment. I mean, it was like $42,000.
Unless you sell your house.
Yeah, no, this issue of it being a capital investment in your house, and of course, if you take the equity out of your house to pay for it, you know, your house is paying for your system. But historically, solar has been valued in terms of the real estate market at $4 a watt, and we're basically putting in at around $2 a watt, including the tax credits. And so, Russ, it would be interesting for me to look at if you're going with the $40,000 power bill. I would, let me look at it.
That included 2 batteries, of course.
Well, the batteries ends up giving you more than just, I mean, this is what I was saying earlier. The batteries are starting to have a payback now, and you can, it's 8 years, but at the same time, it does build value to your house. I'm also putting in battery systems in brand new houses for speculative builders because they sell the house faster. So it's in hopefully this new regime in Washington will give us better incentives to get these batteries out. And the thing you could look at, Russ, is that this bi-directional inverter that my company is going to be offering, it's going to sell for around $7,000, and it could replace an existing inverter.
Well, I don't have a system right now, and I
well,
was looking at
if you've got an electric car,
Nope.
you've got a system. You can plug it in, and it can charge you. You can arbitrage with it if you have an ability to charge your electric car elsewhere during the day, bring that solar power home and drive your house with solar power. So there's new combinations, where it's always new.
David, do you have any, other than I want to change the technical side, does the Department of Energy, are they looking at solar and energy, and when would we expect something, or do you know that what they're working on, other than this one element you talked about where they're talking about cutting off the bi-directional?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting kind of public-private partnership arrangement with this new energy world we're entering. It's certainly being driven by markets, but markets are controlled by we, the citizens. We make the rules for them. How we make a utility behave, what kind of power prices we offer, what we do. So much of the power in terms of what the government chooses to do in policy is just critical. And of course, the state of California had an incentive for solar panels back in the early 2000s, and it made the market. It was one of the most successful market making incentives. So it drove the price down. It made it so it could sell. But the other side that's important is the renewable, like the National Renewable Energy Laboratory that exists in Colorado, in Tennessee, Lawrence, Berkeley. These are all people that are working on public good activities, and they've as with most research, public investment has driven innovation, and so it's happening constantly with new batteries, new research, and making sure that the government puts money into R&D, and that R&D gets distributed. So it's all happening while we speak, Ron. I think the new Biden administration sees the importance of public investment in research. So it's all happening.
But I see the
Linda.
incentives going away.
Linda,
that's a
I think
local
Linda
issue.
has her hand up.
Yeah. That's a
Actually,
tele-
my question was kind of a tie on to that, which is sort of when is the when is the right time to buy, and where's the change in regulation going? You can't really probably market time this, I think, as a consumer, but I've looked into it in the past. I had a reaction similar to I think it was Russ. You know, I thought about it and I just couldn't pull the trigger, and now it seems like things are changing again. So what would be your advice for like time horizon? And then I did have a technical question on that Generac slide you put up.
Yeah.
I was trying to follow what that was, went through it, but we can come back to that.
Okay. Well, I think there's kind of a general feeling that the rules are changing and they're making it less viable for solar. What we do have is that when I think Marcelino bought his solar system, or when anybody bought it 10, 12 years ago, the price was at $5.50 to $6 a watt. And as I'm saying, we're selling it now at $2.50, $3 a watt. So the prices have fallen, and so that the investment for them, and I think, Linda, the direction of the market is self-consumption, so that we, instead of relying on sending power back to PG&E, we just simply don't buy power from them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so this is where, particularly with electric vehicles, batteries, you add them all together, and you have a more resilient. And the thing about power is that the one thing that's absolutely been true is that every year, unrelentingly, the cost of PG&E power has gone up around 4.5% annually. Some years it's 7%. And so that a solar system is one of the few things that you buy that becomes more valuable next year, and the year after that, in the year after that, because the price, the avoided cost of energy that you would have bought is continuing to rise. And I think someday there'll be a time when maybe the solar will levelize the cost of energy. But in terms of that question, when's the best time to do it? The best time to do it was yesterday. Now we need to get it done now, but you do need to balance it out. This is where, if I had to rename my company, Symmetric Energy, it's kind of a catchy name. We liked it. We could find the URL, but if I had to rename it, I'd name it Goldilocks Solar. Not too big, not too small, just right. And that's the way we like to see in terms of custom designing for our customers, that we can really sit down and make a real projection as best we can with the changing markets and the changing values. But this is where, if we had a crystal ball, but yet what we're finding is that good solar systems that are well designed will keep your power bill down to nothing. And and we have an obligation to electrify everything. We have an obligation to stop using fossil fuels. Yeah. So this is the way in which we can do it. And so, okay, it may cost you a bit more, or may this or that, but the nicest thing of all, it won't cost you the earth.
Well, I think it's just like, when's the best time to buy a computer? No matter when you buy it, the next year it's going to be out of date somewhat.
Yeah.
At some point, you're not going to do without a computer forever, so you wait in and you're going to replace it at some point or upgrade.
Yeah, but it seems like the payback for solar is about 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, it is now about 8 to 10 years now, where there was some really perverse economies. I know that, I work in Marin County, and I would have some mansion in Ross that had a tiered pricing, an E1 pricing, so that, they got so much here, then they went up the next tranche and the next tranche and the next tranche, and they were up in the level 5, and they were paying massive amounts for their consumption. And I could sometimes put in a system there that would have a payback of 2 to 3 years. And I always felt kind of like, that's not really what I'm here for. But it so much has to do with pricing, and so much of pricing has to do with public policy. And I know that it's a critical place to you got to raise your voice and make sure your state senator and assemblyman know how you feel.
I mean, I look at it very simply. I'm 74 years old. the return 10 years from now, am I going to be here?
Well, your grandchildren will be.
We do have hang on, Russ. We do have a question from Kevin. He's had his hand up for a bit, but before we take Kevin's question, sorry, Kevin, I wanted to go back to Linda. She asked about the Generac
Okay.
slide. Do we want to just take that up a little bit later, Linda, or?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and get to other questions. And
Okay,
Yeah,
so let's answer Kevin's
kind of went in the
question,
weeds.
and we'll come back to that. Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Kevin.
A couple points. I would agree with John and David. Yesterday was the best time to buy it. I understand Russ's argument, and it's like the attrition. Do you really want to know when the game's over, right? I mean, amortize your life however we all view it. But we've had our system in for 5 years in a small house in Corte Madera, and we added batteries last year. And so a couple cautions. One, David mentioned this. We have an Enphase solar system, and the vendor who delivered that said that no, you can't go to a third party to install a Tesla Powerwall because that'll void your contract, your warranty. And we just laughed that one off and said, we don't think so, since I'm in the contract business. So I think you're misrepresenting life. And he was 3x the price of Tesla going direct. So number one, the battery installation was next to nothing except for the cost of the battery. And the next battery is coming up, and the end costs are next to nothing. Secondly, a transfer panel, David, you didn't mention, but I would suggest you maybe mention that at the end, because we did that. And then we do have a generator, Linda. We have by the way, we don't have a gas mower anymore. So I did what's called a multi-fuel generator, and it plugs into a sidewall outside the house, and it runs to a transfer switch. So you turn off your main, and the generator runs the entire house, and you earmark the switches or the sub panel circuits that you want to run certain key things, or you get a big generator. And that's what David's talking about with the Generac. Generac's a generator.
Well, Generac is they are the largest generator manufacturer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We happen to have a different one, a third party one, but
Yeah, no, but they also.
But you really do need them. I think you want to have them because you're going to have a segue where you don't have the battery back up for a week, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marcelino.
Yep. No, the Generac people realized that the fossil fuel world was they're in the business of backup power, so they ended up getting a solar battery system in place that you can plug a small generator into that makes it far more resilient when you need it. The thing I worry about is in the middle of wintertime when there is no sun and your batteries are nothing. I had one client who had a whole pile of sump pumps, and he was building a house on a very wet place, and every day it seemed like he had another sump pump put in that new house. And I just got to the point where I said, I can't put my heart in my hand and say my batteries are going to support you. So we ended up going with the generator there. But the concept is that we're trying to eliminate the fossil fuel use, but it's a transition. As Kevin has said, you got a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And the thing that's most important for us right now is we keep ourselves safe.
Yep. All right. Any other questions or? John, go ahead.
So
You're
just
muted, John.
You just you talked about the capacitors, and you said don't wait for them. But what kind of time horizon are we talking that they'll be available to put in a house system?
I don't know, John. As I said, we spent good money buying them. We've got a pallet full of them. And those same super caps are working in Australia. They're working in Africa. It's not like they're not working. We just have a regulatory regime that's a bit slow in putting them together, and approving them. So I'm not sure. We bet money that they were going to be allowed now, and they're not there yet. But I think it's close. And what's interesting, John, is that the price that was charged was very competitive.
So it sounds like it could be soon.
It could be very quickly, but I don't know. I mean, when something sounds too good to be true, you tend to think it's too good to be true. But they certainly sing a good song, and they showed it. So it may this time next year, anybody who invested in lithium may seem like a fool.
So Steve, are you trying to ask a question? Your hand is on your phone, or I'm not sure if it's just holding your phone. No, you're muted. We can't hear you. You're muted. Oh, he's using an iPhone, so.
No, I was just turning it around to see how much battery usage. I'm down to my last 20%. So
Oh,
I'm gonna,
okay. Well, if you go away, we know why now. Your battery, you need one of
yeah.
those bigger batteries.
Yeah.
Marcelino?
Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, one comment I wanted to make. I was jealous of Bob Gonzalez and his cat.
Where is Bob?
Oh,
there he
there's
is.
another. There's another. There we go. And James has one too. There you go.
So I have
all
three
right,
of them. You can take your pick.
I wanted to go back real quick. David, if we could go back to that chart with the Generac that Linda mentioned, I kind of wanted to look at that one more time too. By the way, I have a Generac 220-volt generator that I have used for powering up my house.
Where are we? I lost my, I already closed it down. Excuse me.
Oh.
Can you see it now? No?
No,
share
are you
screen.
sharing? You gotta hit that share button.
Yeah.
There we go. Share. And then the Generac. Is that it? Can you see it?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. This is not too difficult to explain. These are the solar panels. The little guy up here, the Snap RSs, are rapid shutdown devices that are required on all solar panels by code. And these little PV link optimizers, they go 1 to every 8 panels, and they then keep the voltage of the solar panels coming to the inverter at the proper level. And so this is the inverter down here, and this is the battery cabinet. And in the battery cabinet, they have up to 6 3-kilowatt-hour batteries. So you get up to 18 kilowatt hours in one single cabinet. You can get 2 cabinets per inverter. So you can get 36 kilowatt hours. And you also have up to 15 kilowatts of solar that come through here. Now, so this really is, other than the PV links and every solar system has some kind of configuration of this, but this comes back down to what other people have said, Kevin and everybody else, is that you have a auxiliary load panel that you put your critical loads on, and that goes in. But the new Generac inverter has the ability to cover a whole 200 amp panel in one time. Now it can't run it all at the same time, but it can cover the whole 200 amps here, and it has I think a 36 amp capacity to provide services to your various appliances. So it's not all that different than other, but what we have been able to find with it is because it's all made by the same group, unlike another one up here, which was like this one, which has got different batteries, different inverters, different this, different that. A lot of these hybrid systems, they don't talk to each other very well. And so what we've discovered on the bloody edge of innovation is that when you get a company like Enphase now, or like Generac, that they make the total package, it works better.
Nice.
And is it priced similar to, let's say, the Tesla Powerwall?
No, the Tesla Powerwall is
or the LG, or
no, the LG Kim Solar Edge is I would call my small to medium sized house, and the Generac is my large to my mid-sized to large, so larger houses. This product I can sell a Generac system for $60,000 with a couple of, if I have two battery cabinets and 10 or 12 kilowatts of solar, it can cost up to $60,000. So it tends to be more expensive.
How big are the Generac battery cabinets?
Physical size, they're about 30. They're not 3 feet wide. They're 28 wide by nearly, they're not 5.5 feet tall, 60 inches, and about, I'd say 8 to 10 inches deep. They're rated for outdoor use. So that's also a benefit. The original ones weren't. They had to put them inside, which always made me nervous. But this is a good solid system. But again, you get 26% off. Your federal tax credits are still there. And actually Biden's extended those for 10 years. They were 30% 2 years ago, and they got down to 26, and they were going to go to 21 or 22. But the federal government, the new administration saved them. And of course, the other part of that was that there's a lot of Republicans coming from Iowa and the Midwest who have huge constituency that are making a lot of money from wind. And so that wind lobby in the Midwest also kept the federal tax credits up. So it wasn't
the
just
federal tax credits are at 26%?
26% right off the top. So it's a credit. You just take it off. It's not you take it right off your taxes. If you're not paying any taxes, you don't get anything though.
So, I mean, $60,000 is of course extremely high. When it was the Generac, if you were just buying the generator, the problem I had was that, it's great that it automatically kicks in with your natural gas system, but if you have an earthquake causing the power outage, your gas is going to be off too. So it becomes ineffective.
Yeah, no, what people with generators, I mean, Kevin, you can speak to this too. When you buy a generator, you buy a maintenance issue. Every 200 hours, you're supposed to change the oil. Every month, you're supposed to start it for X numbers of minutes. And it takes a while to work. And I can guarantee that your generator is going to fail. And so, and it's loud, it's noisy. There's different ways of doing things. There are smaller little generators that are pretty quiet, and those are the kind that charge batteries. So, although I'm not going to sit here and say I encourage anybody to use a fossil fuel generator, but they are what they are. And of course, I think over the long term, when you buy a generator, it doesn't pay for itself. It just costs you money, but it gives you a service. When you buy a solar battery system, it will pay for itself and it will provide you service simultaneously. And it also is an asset that you can add to your house and sell your house for more. So when you put all the benefits together, a properly sized battery system and these new technologies, I mean, we're all going to be driving electric vehicles here. Anybody who thinks that they're going to be driving the ICE vehicle, the internal combustion vehicle into the future, it's not going to happen. General Motors is not going to make any more after 2030. I think it's in that level. I mean, Norway has outlawed the sale of new ICE machines after 2025. And so, and I don't know how many folks here have an electric vehicle. Anybody? Well, Ron, you know how it's a joy to drive, isn't it?
Well, I have a hybrid.
Yeah.
I don't trust the electricity. I only have 60 miles on it.
Well.
And now my mileage is so high, I have to put stabilizer in my gas tank every time I fill up because I don't know when I'm going to use it. And I've gone 2,000 miles on 7.3 gallons of gas.
That sounds like a good problem to have, Ron.
Yeah, no, you're a lucky boy. You're a lucky boy, Ron. But I know that, if anybody's driven an electric vehicle, you wonder why you'd ever drive anything else. It's fast, it's quiet, and I run on sunshine, for goodness sakes. I don't go to a gas station.
Yeah.
Is California going to come around?
Hans, go ahead.
Is California going to come back and give some incentives like the federal government?
I don't know. They've certainly they've incentivized electric vehicles. You still can get. Each one of those electric vehicles had a certain quota. For instance, the Chevy Bolt, it blew past its quota because a lot of people bought Bolts and love them, and so it's a market incentive. Now, if you wanted to buy a Kia Niro, there's still California state incentives for that. I think it comes into, you know, like $10,000. It's a lot. I mean, these vehicles run for what, 40,000, and you take 10,000 off and they're 30,000, and they get 280 miles per charge. So the incentives from the state of California are still there, but they're not uniformly across all of the, you know, you're not going to get it for a Tesla anymore because they've used up their quota. And also, if you make more than, you know, $200,000 a year, they're not going to give it to you because a lot of people bought Teslas, got big rebates, and they were millionaires. And it was kind of like, well, where's the social equity in that?
So I'm talking about the solar systems for the house. Is
No,
California?
I think the prices come down to the place where we don't need any subsidies. Other than I'd keep the tax credit, keep it. I don't know what, I mean, if we're truly going to go to zero, you know, cut our carbon by 50% by 2030 and then be all net zero by 2050, then we're going to have to change a lot of habits, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And that's where the incentives, it's really about how do you pay for it? You know, not doing it, we're going to pay a lot more because what climate change is going to bring is going to be a catastrophe to our economy and everything else. So it's really a balance. I wish I had more knowledge for you guys, and I could, you know, I'm old enough. I'm as old as, you know, I'll be 73 this year myself. So I've been on this earth for a while, but I got no magic bullets for this one.
I mean, that's what I look at as the tax credit. I mean, it's
a big one. That 26%, if it continues to stay there, that's worth a lot. And
but it's still, even with the tax credit, I looked at on a system for my home, I was, you know, 8 to 10 years to seeing a return, because I could take the tax credit, I could absorb that in 1 year. That's not a problem.
Yep. Yeah, well, 8 to 10 years gives you an ROI of what, 12, 13%. And what do you get on your money now?
Not much.
Not much. So and that's why a lot of New York Stock Exchange money, Wall Street money has gone into solar because they made money. You know, so if you're a business, you not only get the tax credit, but you get the accelerated depreciation at the same time.
Well, I'm not a business.
Yeah, well, that's where you know, there's different tax things. But if you had, you know, someone else come in and buy, this is where leasing used to be. So, you know, everybody was leasing because
that's a catch-22 that catches up with people.
Yeah, no,
leasing.
I mean, in my business, I say friends don't let friends lease, and there's very little leasing going on in the industry now.
People don't realize you go to refinance your house, okay?
Yep.
Pay off that lease.
Yep.
All right, let me let's give a chance to Hans to ask a question. He's has his hand up for a little bit. So
you're very polite.
First, David. Hi, David. Welcome back to I will be in touch. But since somebody mentioned earthquake, I just wonder, how does a solar system stand up in an earthquake?
Well, does the house stand?
Yeah, no, I think Hans is, because, you know, it's interesting. I mean, we end up bolting the system to the house and in turn driving it, you know, pulling it down with conduit. And of course, it's going to be a lot more stable than your natural gas pipeline will be, and for your electrical services. So, I mean, we live in an uncertain time in terms of, and we've become so dependent upon energy, so that maybe you've got a smaller part of your solar that's you can always isolate and dedicate to batteries. I'm not sure, Hans, but this whole issue of resiliency becomes so critical to us all. I mean, this is where small microgrids and your neighbor being able to send power to you and how that all works out. This is a whole new way of doing things. And it is about, in California, face it, we're faced with a, you know, if this year is as bad as the last 4 years in terms of fire, we're going to have to do something really fundamentally different very quickly. So I don't know, Hans. I wish I had an answer for you, but you know, the other side, I think with Kevin, I know there's another product out on the market called a goal zero, goal, GOAL, like a soccer goal zero. And I was just at Costco. I was amazed. It's a 3,000 watt unit. It was like $3,000, $3,500, and it had a couple of 200 watt panels that could charge it up, and it was more than enough to keep your fridge and your essential services running. And it's a portable unit. You could take it camping with you, and so there are these kind of solar portable generators that could be used in that sense of emergency. I mean, we got to keep our cell phones charged. We got to keep that communication open. So goal zero, if you really haven't got the money to go with the big solar system and this and that, take a look at goal zero. I know in Costco, they were selling at a price that I couldn't buy them wholesale for because Costco has got that big opportunity. So goal zero, 3,000 watts, 4,000 watts, 6,000 watts, you can look at it. It's an option. And that's the kind of security maybe in an earthquake. It's like having a water supply. You have your energy supply that's there too.
Okay, and I'm in a similar situation as far as I'm sure for me it would make sense on an economic basis, the payback. But it's certainly on an environmental part, and to improve the payback, I guess right now my biggest expense is natural gas, heating the house and heating the hot water. So I guess the ideal situation would be to convert those to electric heating and electric water tank.
Yep, and power them from the sun. Heat pumps, the combination of a solar water heater, thermal, going into electric resistant element being run by solar photovoltaics. It's a viable, very good way to do it. I mean, we just, and then making sure that everything we use it as sufficiently as possible. I think we've gotten used to this big fossil fuel. It's just so consumptive and so wasteful. And we've become used to it. So it's a matter of using everything we've got as well as we can. That's why I started this conversation about being smart, that if we are smart about it, we can have computers that help make decisions for us on a daily basis. Imagine if you could leave your house and just say, house, go into conservation mode. And so everything in your house turns off that's not essential. You keep your refrigerator on, but everything else goes off. And all these little blue lights, you guys get up in the middle of the night, have a pee and you go walk through the house and you got nothing but little lights everywhere. Well, those phantom loads are now making up close to 15% of your electricity bill. And so if you had that ability, say, turn off, or, it senses no one's home and it turns it off. So everything is used in, instead of, you got a dryer that comes on not at 9 o'clock at night when the power is most expensive, but the dryer knows that it's not supposed to go on until midnight when your power prices go down. So you get to optimize your whole resource use. And the vision is, and I really came clear when I read Friedman's book, Thank You for Being Late. He wrote very eloquently about the convergence of all these low-cost solar, low-cost batteries, connectivity, computers, smart. And so this is a computer society. And so you get an idea that we've got to be able to use this artificial intelligence to serve our needs. And I think it is in that context that we then get the most utility from our precious energy resources. And this is really what my business is about. I've been about since I started. And it's so that's really critical. And that's what that combination is what I really do have hope that we won't be so profligate in our use of energy in the future.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was a really good conclusion. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording in a second here. But thank you for the great presentation. And we got some, a lot of clapping.
Yeah. well, thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but if anybody wants to stick around a little bit longer, by all means, if you have the time. So I'm going to stop recording here.